It is the morning of April 21st, 1526, and on the sun-baked plains of Panipat, a small battle-weary army from Afghanistan, Uzbekistan and other parts of Central Asia stare across and see a massive army advancing towards them. The opposing force is led by the Delhi Sultanate, the powerful rulers of the Indian subcontinent, and they have called all their vassals and reserves for this battle. And more than 40,000 men and 1,000 armored war elephants are ready to clash with the invading force. And I'm sure to the commander of the Delhi Sultanate, Ibrahim Lodi, the outcome of this battle was a foregone conclusion. The invaders are vastly outnumbered, far from home, and are seemingly paralyzed at the sight of their massive army. But the invading commander Babur does not intend to fight a traditional Indian style battle, because behind his makeshift wall of linked wagons are tools of war that the Indian subcontinent has never seen deployed on such a scale. Ottoman style matchlock muskets and cast bronze field cannons. And within hours the roar of gunpowder will shatter the supremacy of the war elephant, break the Delhi Sultanate and lay the foundations for the mighty Mughal Empire. But before we begin, don't forget, if you want to find out more about weapons, wars and warriors from Indian history, then subscribe to my channel Lethal History. So to understand how a small army of foreign invaders broke one of India's greatest military powers, we must zoom out a bit to examine the fractured geopolitical landscape of the early 16th century. Because by the 1520s, the once mighty Afghan originating Delhi Sultanate is crumbling from within, and its ruler Sultan Ibrahim Lodi is in a civil war with vassal powerful Afghan nobles, and many of his own relatives are also plotting his downfall as well. But aside from these internal issues, he also has to contend with a new indigenous superpower rising within the Indian subcontinent, and this new power is called the Rajput Confederacy, an empire stretching from the Mandu to the very edges of Agra. And this Rajput Confederacy has already defeated the armies of the Delhi Sultanate on multiple occasions. And watching this fragmented subcontinent from his stronghold in Kabul is Babur, a descendant of both Timur and Genghis Khan. And Babur spent most of his early career fighting a losing war in Central Asia against many of his own kin, eventually establishing himself as a great and ambitious military strategist who has access to the powerful artillery of the Ottoman Empire, which will help him conquer the divided India under his iron fist. And between the years 1519 to 1524, Babur launches aggressive probing campaigns into the Punjab, with these expeditions teaching him two vital lessons. The first being that the political cohesion of his Afghan enemies is hopelessly brittle. Local governors are willing to defect at a moment's notice if the price or threat is sufficient enough. And secondly, he understands that facing the sheer mass of an Indian field army on open ground would be suicide for his outnumbered cavalry and infantry soldiers. And in late 1525, Babur crosses the Indus for the final time, marching toward Delhi with an army estimated by modern historians to be roughly between 12,000 to 15,000 men. And his opponent, the Sultan of Delhi, Ibrahim Lodi, marches north to meet him with a host numbering between 30,000 to 40,000 active combatants, alongside 1,000 war elephants to be deployed as shock troops. Babur knows he is outnumbered, so he carefully chooses his ground for this final epic battle, and he halts his forces at the town of Panipat, anchoring his right flank against the town's buildings, and to protect his left, his men dig deep trenches and fell trees, creating an impassable barrier. To protect his center, he deploys his Ottoman-inspired trap, approximately 700 baggage carts chained together with rawhide, shielding 20 to 24 field guns and a number of matchlock infantry as well. Crucially, however, Babur leaves gaps in this wagon line, exactly a bow shot apart. This gap will allow his elite mobile cavalry detachments to ride out, strike and retreat. This maneuver is called the Tulugma, the classic step pincer movement, with the added benefit of being aided by an impenetrable core of gunpowder and cannons. And on the morning of April 21st, 1526, Ibrahim Lodi takes the bait. Relying on the traditional momentum of a massed frontal assault, the Sultan orders his army to charge. But as the Afghan Indian lines advance, they realize the trap but far too late. Babur's anchored flanks leave Lodi with an impossibly narrow frontage. The massive Delhi army cannot sweep around the sides. Instead, the advancing wings are forced to compress inwards towards the center, turning an organized formation into a packed, chaotic mob. And as the tightly packed Afghans get funneled into the killing zone, Babur gives the order. The cannons roar to life, the sound causing a psychological and physical shockwave through the enemy force. Contemporary sources emphasize the sheer terror these artillery weapons unleashed upon Lodi's elephants. The deafening noise, the blending smoke, the lethal impact of bronze cannonballs shatters the animals' discipline, and the great war elephants turn around, stampeding blindly back through their own tightly packed ranks, crushing hundreds, perhaps even thousands of Delhi Sultanate soldiers immediately. And the matchlock infantry under the command of Mustafa Rumi deploy volley after volley into the paralyzed Afghan center. Unlike arrows, these lead balls effortlessly pierce armor and flesh at 100 meters away, reaping a bloody and terrible toll on the infantry soldiers of the Delhi Sultanate. And to capitalize on the chaos his forces have already caused, Babur unleashes the Talugma. His specialized Turco-Mongol cavalry detachment pours through the gaps in the wagon lines, riding swiftly around the flanks of the disorganized Afghan host, unleashing storm after storm of composite bow arrows into the enemy's rear. Trapped between the unyielding wall of artillery fire to their front and the sweeping cavalry storm to their rear, Lodi's army collapses in on itself. While exact casualty metrics are uncertain, historians unanimously agree that the slaughter was immense. And Sultan Ibrahim Lodi fights bravely to the bitter end, but he is also eventually cut down in the melee alongside 15,000 of his own men. And by midday the battle is over. The gunpowder trap had worked flawlessly, and it had made Babur the most powerful person on the Indian subcontinent. Babur was not the first person to use artillery in the battlefield in India, as it is documented that other Indian powers did have access to firearms. But what showed Babur's true genius was his organizational and military skills. He succeeded through composite warfare, seamlessly integrating lethal Ottoman firepower with highly mobile Central Asian cavalry, all held together by his immense charisma and ability to exploit the political disunity of his foes. Before 1526, Indian warfare was defined by the momentum of the war elephant and the massed cavalry charge. But by bringing the Ottoman-style artillery to the plains of India, Babur changed the tactical geometry of the subcontinent forever. It was a revolution written in fire and blood, one that allowed a wandering prince to forge the Mughal Empire and alter the destiny of India for centuries to come. And more videos on the Mughal Empire will be coming in future episodes, but for now, if you enjoyed this video, please do like and share with others. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to my channel, Lethal History, so you can find out more about wars, weapons, and warriors from Indian history. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Bye.